FableThan here, and welcome back to part 8 of our art journey. This week, I am trying a different thing. I'm playing around with my work schedule when it comes to making videos on this channel. I'm not playing around with the upload schedule, but I'm just trying things differently. I mentioned it a bit more in the last video, part 7, that is being uploaded on last Tuesday. So if you want to understand more of what I mean by that, check it out there. But for this video, we're going to be primarily doing the coloring for our art project. And last video, we were talking a bit more about the work side of things, what I meant by schedule changes. And this video, we are instead going to be talking more about the art piece itself. I do feel that in the last few videos I've been making, I haven't really been talking too much about the art piece, and I was talking more about the journey of art creation. So I do feel like for those who might want to be more interested in understanding the substance of what I'm drawing and why I'm drawing it, it would make more sense to talk about it here. I talked about it a bit in the last video, but I didn't really touch on it. It was just really the last 2 to 3 minutes of that video. So for this video, or rather this week's art project, I have been watching One Piece a lot lately. I very much like the iconic Luffy smile. You know, the primary protagonist of One Piece. He has this very iconic grin that's like very exaggerated, very cartoony, and it just kind of gives off this really positive vibe, so I wanted to put that into a character. Now, I'm not drawing Luffy, I'm trying to... A big part of this series is that I'm trying to do my own art projects. So that's why, as you'll notice from the coloring side of things, it's not really colored in the typical Luffy colorings. This is my own kind of character. But that being said, I didn't want to just copy One Piece's design. I am talking about my inspiration because I think that's completely fair, completely valid, and appropriate to do. That, you know, there is a reference in my head. I'm not actually using a reference image like how I did for last week. Instead, I am just kind of going off of memory for what I think the Luffy smile most encapsulated. So, for example, Luffy's iconic smile usually has his teeth closed into kind of a more closed grin. However, for this, I have my character's mouth more open. So it's kind of like he's laughing a bit, or he's mid-talk or something. Additionally, I am trying to play around with a darker skin tone. So maybe I should talk a bit about the paint there, or actually, before I even talk about the paint, I should stick to this kind of talking about my shaping and ideas. You'll notice that, especially since I'm not using a reference, the actual stance of my character is at a different angle than the traditional, like, kind of Luffy pose that I'm talking about. And that's partially why, like, I don't really believe too much in tracing. I believe that reference art is good, but you shouldn't flat out trace something because you kind of lose that personality to that, or that personal choice. My character isn't doing a perfect one-to-one of Luffy's pose, but that's more on the grounds that I'm basing it off of the angles I feel most comfortable drawing with, and the angles I think would kind of most bring out that kind of laid-back and happy personality. So, as, you know, people can tell, obviously this does feel like it's paying homage to Luffy, or, you know, to a One Piece design, which I take a lot of pride that my art kind of is inspired by that, but it's also hopefully working towards being different, right? Now I can talk about the painting side of things, where primarily my favorite way of painting is using what they call gouache paint. I'm definitely not pronouncing that properly, but it's kind of like a watercolor that is very faded, so the colors kind of blend a bit better, especially in digital art, in my opinion. And that's why you can tell, like, I did like the red base, the green base for kind of like the flushing of cheeks. I did a darker skin tone to go on top of that. And I'm not sure when you're gonna see it, but with the hair, what I did was I did 3 different shades of green under kind of the same color. and then I put a more yellowish green on top of it, and it kind of does this little blending effect. I'm not recording this while looking at the art piece. I'm actually trying to recall from memory. That is kind of just something I've been wanting to practice, because I think it would be beneficial to me to practice speaking and thinking and talking things out without needing to rely on a reference or rely on a script. It does actually make making videos easier, or rather quicker. The downside is that it's probably not as coherent, and there's a lot of stuff I have to cut out, but it does become a bit more fun where I kind of have to look back at what I'm talking about rather than relying on something to tell me what I want to talk about. And the main last thing I want to talk about is that you'll see that it's not just one image of the character today, it's about 3 or 4 that I'm doing. And that's because I want, in future projects, maybe next year or the year after, I want to start making my own stories, my own comics and stuff. Sorry, I'm back. Someone was driving by and they were blasting their music. That's kind of one of the annoying parts of kind of being in the area where I live. It's just, people are very obnoxious with it. I mean, it's part of kind of like, I guess, my city's culture kind of thing, or my neighborhood's culture kind of thing. So like, I get it. Like, it's kind of like something just people do here, but it's annoying when, you know, you're trying to record and a car comes by and it's just blasting music. Where was I? Oh yeah, so I eventually want, in larger projects in the future, to be able to kind of create my own stories. But to do that, you need to have a consistent understanding of how your characters look and the angles they can do. I tried making the story earlier this year, but I wasn't happy with how it was coming out because it felt very rushed, very sloppy, and the characters felt inconsistent. Now, as you tell from this art piece, the character's face is kind of warping and is still inconsistent amongst all of it, but I am doing this more as kind of a start to the practice, so my hope is that I'm going to get better as I go along. Maybe I'll, do some research on how to make it more consistent, but I'm also kind of happy just kind of figuring it out as I go. And yeah, let me know down in the comment section below how you think about the character, what you think about the design, or really anything, any kind of thoughts you want to share. I'd love to hear it. One thing I like about the channels, or rather, one thing I like about this series being pretty short. Sorry, I kind of trailed off there, but one thing I really like about the video series being kind of on the smaller end of things is that when people comment, it's easier for me to get back to them and talk things out. And as I've mentioned several times in past videos, this is meant to be our art journey, so I really appreciate seeing you guys come along, returning faces, new faces, all that's awesome. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed, and this has been FableThan, and I'll see you all next time.